He dangled her off a 17th floor balcony, warned her, "I'm the devil, I could kill you." She begged him to stop, he didn't. He gave her drugs, paid off security, guilted her into sex, then called it love. Friends, lovers, employees break their silence. This isn't just about Diddy, it's about the shame that keeps us women quiet and the fear that keeps us stuck. And today, we break both. Joining me today is one of the most respected minds in criminal profiling. Dr. Anne Burgess joins me to unpack this week's chilling testimonies. Welcome, Dr. Anne.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. It's delightful to be here.
As always, I so appreciate you being here. The key really is to go over a lot of these testimonies and break down and try to understand what's happening, why it's happening, and then how can we use that to really help women who may be struggling in these types of relationships.
Yes.
So we're going to start with one of the first testimonies this week was Brianna Bongolan, and she's actually Cassie's friend. She testified that in 2016, Combs barged into her apartment, followed her out onto the balcony, and according to her lawsuit, they say he grabbed her, turned her back to his chest, and molested her by groping her breast as she yelled to be left alone. When she struggled, he hoisted her over the railing by the armpits, and she said that she was held over a 17-story balcony, and he threw her onto the balcony furniture.
Well, this was an extraordinarily dangerous situation from what you described. So she really has to think only of survival at this point. He's got her physically. This is very much different than just verbal kinds of control. He now has her not only physically controlled, holding her under the arms, but also has her in a dangerous situation. If he ever let go, she could easily have died 17 floors. So I think that he tells us a lot about him, tells us that he must have been very angry at something that he had to take such extreme control of her. We also have, and I think the jury has seen, the elevator scene where he showed the amount of anger and rage that he lost such control with Cassie at that elevator. Now he has a second victim where he has threatened her even more, if you will, that he could actually throw her to her death. So as I said, what can women do in a case like this? She couldn't do anything except absolutely comply to save herself. When you talk of women that have had such extreme dangerousness, they have done what they could to calm the man down, to say whatever they had to save their life. And I always recommend that. That's for, say, examples like when a gun is being held at you. You know, this is not the time to challenge him. Even if you have to say things that you normally wouldn't say, like, I love you, let's just be together, and get that, whatever the danger is. Now, in this case, she had to get herself back off of the balcony to be safe. And that was a terribly aggressive situation and dangerous.
Yeah, there's so many photos as well. So she goes to her chiropractor. There's a bunch of photos of the bruises, of the damage that he's done. And then she talks about the fact that she had suffered from night terrors and paranoia because of this. And then at one point, she's actually at a photo shoot with her friend Cassie. And she says that allegedly Combs got in her face and told her, "I'm the devil and I could kill you." She says, "I was terrified." So now let's really put those two things together. You've seen somebody be very abusive to you. You know what they're actually capable of now. There's one thing about the threat. There's a whole other thing of seeing what they're capable of. And now he really makes this very serious threat of her life. In those moments, as a woman, how do you overcome the fear to speak up in order to get help? Because I'm just assuming there's someone at home watching right now that is in that situation where they're fear for their life. How can women handle this?
Well, certainly at the time they can't. They have to comply with what's going on. And I think that we need to look at what we call the physiology of trauma, that the body in an unconscious way is reacting. You cannot control how your body is reacting to such severe danger. So that has to be taken into consideration. I think the example of her nightmares, the example of her shaking, and because she could be getting flashbacks and not even realize it. They can't just come forward immediately because she's terrified. If he can do this to me, could he do it to my family? So I can't overemphasize how dangerous these types of situations are, because we certainly know that women get murdered. So that's a reality factor. So she has to be able to tell someone that she trusts. That's why shelters are set up. That's why there is help out there for people. But again, it's so important that we understand and can appreciate the amount of stress and the amount of trauma that she's going for, that she will probably never lose. That this being this close to danger of her life, being held over a balcony, she is going to remember this over and over. And look at what he says to her. I could kill you. I'm the devil. He is. He is.
One of the things that really infuriates me in this whole scenario, this case, is how many people are saying, but if that was true, if it really happened, if they were that scared, if it was that dangerous, why go back? Why speak to him again? And if anyone's listening right now that is ready to write that comment in this video, what do you have to say to them?
The control continues. This coercive control, which is very, very aptly applied to the situation, it's there all the time. They can't get away from it. So it's not easy. You can't just say, well, you walk away, go walk to a shelter, go walk to a police station. They can't do it. They are in absolute fear, and he will come after them. There's no saying that he wouldn't in some way be able to get them again. So where are they ever safe? Where are they ever free? You ask anyone, any woman that has been through this type of fearful situation, and it can take months and years and maybe never to really get rid of the terrible fear, because it has imprinted on our brain and in our limbic system. That's the powerful place in our brain where all of this fear and anxiety and trauma registers.
So there's these different scenarios. So you have the woman who is going through it themselves, and we've covered a lot about how do they speak up, why do they not speak up, etc. But then there's the other element, which is when it's your friend. So this was Cassie's friend that this happened to. Cassie then, as part of the evidence, she sends a text to Christina Coram, who is actually Diddy's chief of staff. And the text reads, hey, I found out something crazy. He came into my house while my friends were here. We were sleeping. He went to Bana, which is the abbreviation of her nickname, choked her and dangled her feet off the balcony. She then continues to say, I can't get involved. So that, I don't even know where to start with that. As a friend, Cassie's already fearful herself. She now hears this horrifying thing happen to her friend. And I almost empathize that she can't get involved because she's still fearing for her own life. So now if someone's listening as a friend or a mother or anyone that may have someone in their life, how do you overcome, or can you overcome your own fear to speak up for your friend? Or how do we understand as a friend how staying silent is the best thing to do, even though you aren't sticking up for your friend?
Well, there are a couple of ways to look at this. And I'm always reminded of the Kitty Genovese case, where Kitty was raped and murdered right on the street outside of many, many apartments. And people heard that. She was screaming. People didn't come forward. And they studied that later on. They studied that and found out that people, if they think somebody is going to come to the other person's aid, they will not come forward. So it is a type of behavior that is very hard for us. It's almost counterintuitive. But people are so scared themselves, what they call bystander intervention. You know, people just aware that somebody is screaming. I mean, how many people would do that nowadays in New York City or Los Angeles, in a very big place where they hear someone screaming? You would hope that they would call, but they wouldn't necessarily. So we have to always make sure that we do follow through, that we get help somehow to the person and to understand that it's going to take a while. So I think that if people don't understand why they just don't walk away, they really don't understand the whole dynamics of trauma and of fear. And so I usually try to take people to situations where they felt very fearful. And he says not only does he do it, he holds her over a balcony where he's literally implying that how powerful he is. And you cannot expect that she's just going to walk away. Or her friend who has been, Cassie went through similar things. And so you're dealing with someone, people get numb sometimes.
That's what I was going to ask you, of how much from the abuser, so from Sean Combs, he does this deliberately. He knows his victims. He knows how to choose them because he knows he's already got Cassie under his thumb. So he almost picks the people that he knows are safe to manipulate, abuse, because he knows he's actually got control of everybody.
Absolutely. He's even trying that in the courtroom. I'm really fascinated to see how he's trying to control the judge. And
have you heard what's happened?
No, I haven't.
So yesterday, actually, the judge warned Diddy. So apparently the judge saw Combs on 2 different occasions nodding vigorously at the jury when Brianna was taking the stand, and he gave him a warning. He said it's absolutely unacceptable. It cannot ever happen again. And the judge says if it does, he will consider removing him from the courtroom. So how did you know that? You just know that that's like a manipulative tactic?
That's him, absolutely. Everything you've told me about him and how he's behaving. Now he has taken it into the courtroom, and this is very interesting. Now the judge is being put in the situation where he's challenging his authority. This is a man who has a lot of feelings about women and men. He's misogynist. We know that. He really, he likes to humiliate women. He doesn't care for women, even though he may try to manipulate them. So what is the judge going to do? Because the Constitution says you have the right to face your accuser. So would that be a possibility for a mistrial or for a defense, appeal? So there are all kinds of very interesting things that are going on in this courtroom. So he doesn't just turn his behavior off when he's in the courtroom. I think the other thing is how his pattern of manipulation and how he lures the women in with this kind of sweet, nice, I care for you, etc. But that elevator scene. It's one thing to hear, the man beat her up and Cassie and so forth, and he'll try to get a little sympathy for what happened. But then when you actually see it, you cannot deny the amount of rage and how easily he could have killed her.
Well, that actually takes us now to Jane. So she was the next one that took the stand. That's her pseudonym. For people that may not know, she was dating Diddy for a good few years. She said that her first date with Sean actually lasted 5 days. They had incredible sex over these period of 5 days. She said that she was completely head over heels for him after she started dating him in 2021. Quote, he was larger than life, super charming, and he was immediately charming and immersed in her life and conversations with her. I assume that's priming love bombing?
Yes.
Would that be correct?
Yes, that'd be correct. Yes, absolutely. What we'd want to really watch for is what gets him angry. He probably won't show it, but there's something when I can remember in the testimony where she would try to get rid of the man that he would bring in for her to have sex with. And that was upsetting her, and yet she felt she didn't want to displease him. So that whole feeling of the woman's never in control in the situation, that he keeps humiliating her over and over.
Jane's story really hit me as a reflection of how many women end up becoming trapped in these long-term relationships with sociopaths, psychopaths, and they wonder, where did it start? How did this happen? And in hearing her testimony, it is somewhat an incredible reflection of how a lot of women get trapped. And I'd love to kind of go through each section if you're okay with that.
Sure, yes.
So she has the love bombing, the over-the-top, intense emotion over these 5 days of when she starts dating him. So that was in January 2021. Only 4 months later, this is when Sean allegedly starts talking to her about other men and these things that he would call hotel nights. And he kept just telling her, these are my fantasies. I would love to see you with another man, things like that. And eventually, before she knows it, one day she just agrees to it.
Yes.
Because my partner was so excited and it was already happening. So she said yes, and she was like, oh my God, he's so excited, it's already happening. And she doesn't even get a beat to go, hang on a minute, I have to think through this. So talk to me about going from love bombing, extreme intense emotions, to then that first little sign of what we know now as the trap.
Yeah, well, as you say, in the beginning, he knows how to lure her in. Probably comments on how attractive she is. He likes her dress, and she really thinks that he's going to be with her that night. And then he turns the tables. We know that he's really setting up his own pornography, and evidently is filming it. Again, so exploitative, so demeaning to her, but she's caught up. And also you have to be careful of the drugs, that there are drugs being used, and that can very much alter a person, obviously alter their conscious level and lure her in. So, and he knows how to titrate it, if you will, of how much to give her. Probably he's not taking as much, so that he's staying rather not overly drugged. And she keeps doing it, thinking that he's going to he's promised her we'd be alone, and she keeps thinking ahead. So he's very clever. He's very, he's been at this a long time. Where he learned it from somewhere, and he has such power. He really does. And women certainly like to be seen with power of that kind. They certainly don't like what goes with it. But you can see, I think people can understand why they are attracted to men like that. He was very powerful. A lot of people were attracted to him.
Yeah, so true. So she gets this love bombing. She's attracted to him. He's charming. She's taking drugs. She said she took only drugs twice in her life before she ever met him, and now she's doing it all the time. And she agrees to this one night. She says within a few hours, the hotel room was already arranged, and male escorts arriving. And initially, and this is what I'd really love for you to help us and any woman listening think through. She said initially it was actually exhilarating because it actually felt a little what she calls taboo. Now, she thought it was a one-off. She thought it was going to be this one wild night, and then that was going to be it, and her and Diddy, could go off into the sunset. But she said after that, another man was involved in their sexual encounters at least 90% of the time. Okay, so now talk to me about the exhilaration, the power of taboo, and how that actually is something that can lure us women, but ends up being part of the trap, where now she feels like, I did it once, and now Sean's saying that it needs to be 90% of the time.
Yeah.
Where that line starts to kind of gradually move, right? That boundary starts to get pushed.
Yeah, she's locked in. She can't get away. It means giving up everything. And we always have to understand that there is a positive to it, whether it's her feelings for him, whether it's the drugs, the money. There is something that hooks her in, and he just exploits it. So for your listeners, women need to think through, wonder why the person, my partner, is interested in me and why he does this to me, and begin to ask some questions about trying to figure it out. They can kind of play detective and see if that will help them give some leverage. That will help take the emotion out. You want them to take the emotion out to understand.
That's so true. He was also giving her a lot of cash. She didn't really work. So she was saying every time she would go to say, I'm not sure if I want to do this, he would kind of lean into the fact that he was paying her rent, and she wouldn't be able to live anywhere if he wasn't paying her rent. One of her quotes was, I want to say we even started to use the L word. It was really deep. Now, obviously for her, God bless her, she felt like it was very deep. And as a woman, when you feel like you're being in love and you're doing these things and some things, again, I'm going to go back to the fact that the first time she did say that the hotel night was exhilarating. So I don't want to ignore that. But I think it's important, though, to highlight it because these are parts of the traps that end up being the thing that holds us behind. And you actually said it isn't all bad. The fact that sometimes he's saying he loves her and he's giving her these gifts.
Sure. And they will put up with things because they feel they're weighing, if you will, people weigh pluses and minuses. What are the pluses? What are the minuses? I can put up with the minuses. I can put up with the bad. I mean, that is in any situation. It doesn't have to be something like this. You did mention that he had a woman that worked for him. People can ignore certain things because they are being paid as work.
How much of it is it that the person that Cassie reached out to that works for Sean is a woman? We've seen it with Epstein as well. So how much is that part of the trap as a woman where you reach out and to another woman and she's like, it's fine, that becomes even more powerful than if a guy was to say it to us?
That's right. They are very smart that they have another woman there rather than a man, rather than a male. Also, I understand in some of the testimony that a team would come in to set up red lights and to, set up the scene. So that's a production. And in some way that could be seen as he thinks enough of me that he's going to have this and take videos and so forth. So it plays to people's narcissism, if you will. So we need to understand all of that. And for women that need to get out of a situation, certainly they have to try to better understand why they're in it. What is keeping them in it?
Dr. Ann Burgess, as always, I think you are incredibly amazing. The work you do helps so many women. And I just want to thank you again for always coming on Women of Impact and helping us break these things down so that no woman ever gets trapped again. That is the goal. And thanks to you, I think we're moving the needle.
Well, thank you. You're doing wonderful, wonderful work. So keep it up.
Thank you, Dr. Ann. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Joining me now is a woman who's gone toe-to-toe with serial killers, defended the infamous, and knows every single trick that the defense will try to play. Today, she's breaking down the legal minds behind the Diddy case. Welcome, Karen Conti.
Great to see you, as always.
I actually just had Dr. Ann Burgess on where we were talking about the judge having to warn Diddy about the fact that he is making eye contact and vigorous head nods to the jury. As a defense attorney, kind of know the tactics. How much of that plays into it when he's very famous, people know him, and now he's trying to make eye contact?
Well, it's not a bad thing to make eye contact with the jury if you're the defendant. But he must have been doing it in a way that was suggestive, and he was nodding his head and he was reacting. And that's sort of a silent testimony, if you will. And when it comes to that, that's when the judge is going to say to him, you know what, you can't do that. If you're not going to get up on the stand and talk, you can't do it from your seat. And it must have been pretty dramatic for the judge to have ruled that way. And listen, when you're a defense lawyer and you've got a client who's reacting, you don't want him to do that. Why? Because the jury's going to take it one way or the other. Maybe it's like, wow, that makes him look innocent. But the other half of the jury might be saying, why is he doing this? Is he trying to intimidate me? So that's why you see defendants largely being poker-faced when they're sitting at that table.
Silent testimony. That hit me really well in the sense of he's agreeing to what someone's saying on the stand. So subconsciously, if you're on the jury, it kind of goes, oh, that must have happened, because it definitely becomes that subliminal messaging. Okay, thank you for helping us think through that. Okay, I'd like to now move on to Eddie Garcia. He was the security guard at the Intercontinental Hotel in 2016 when that horrifying video came out. So Combs referred to him as Eddie, my angel. Garcia recounts on the stand that he kept repeating that I sounded like a good guy and he believed that I could really help. He then actually met up with Combs after and received $100,000 in cash in a brown paper bag. But talk to me about that testimony from a prosecution standpoint and a defense standpoint.
Well, I think, first of all, it plays into this racketeering charge. And if your listeners will remember, the racketeering charge requires all these different what we call predicate acts, like drug dealing, prostitution, guns, and all of these things. And then we have to tie it up into this conspiracy conspiracy to commit the larger enterprise crime. And so what this does, Lisa, is to say, you know what, Diddy bribed the guy. I mean, you might want to call it damage control, but this is bribery. He's a security guard making $10 an hour, and here's Diddy offering him $100,000 in a brown paper bag in cash to kiss this goodbye. You know, you're not supposed to do that. That's bribery. And so I think that goes to the predicate acts of bad behavior, obstruction of justice. And I think that that's how the prosecution is going to use it. Okay, on the other side, I think the defense is going to say, well, this was just damage control. Listen, Cassie didn't want this out either because she had a movie coming out. It wasn't going to speak well to her that she was in a hallway getting beaten up by her boyfriend. So I think that, you know, the defense is going to say that he was just doing a favor for himself and his girlfriend.
How much of that actually carries weight? When you've got $100,000 in cash, is that a sign of like it being illegal at all? Or is it just really they're trying to prove the intention behind the payment?
I think there's a lot of things going on here. You know, a guy who has this much power can silence anyone. Right? And we're seeing that theme throughout here. They silence people. He silences people by paying them off. He silences people by threatening them, by extorting them, by threatening to expose videotapes. So this is a guy who has all of the tools necessary to control people. And I think that plays right into the prosecution's hand when it comes to showing that people did what he wanted because they were afraid, because there was money, or some other motivation.
I'd love to now move on to actually something that's very much relatable to my community. So Brianna, who actually claims allegedly that Diddy dangled her over a 17-story building. Now, part of the defense in the argument is that actually they have receipts that show that Diddy was actually in New York staying at the Trump Towers when she claimed that this dangling happened. Now, what her response is there's a lot of confusion. She's like, I don't remember exactly what day it happened. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't quite remember. I don't agree with you. I assume that's actually quite powerful from the defense's standpoint.
Agreed. And so the defense is going to do anything that pokes holes, whether it's credibility, whether it's her motivation to testify, or whether it's, you know, does she even get the day right? Now, frankly, if it happened that long ago, would you really remember the exact date? Remember, there was a massive amount of drugs being taken by all of these people. And it would be, you know, completely par for the course that you don't remember exactly the day that it happened. You remember that you were dangled on a 17-story balcony. How could you forget that? And also, it was corroborated by others who saw that happen or saw the aftermath, which is apparently what he did. Is he took her off and he threw her into some furniture, which caused some harm to her, which she had pictures of. So again, if I were the prosecution, I'd say, hey, maybe we got the date wrong, but it happened. And, you know, you can pick all the things apart you want, but you can't deny that he actually did that.
Yeah. Whew. All right, Karen, thank you so much for always showing up and helping us think through both the prosecution and the defense. It is very much important that we look at it both from the psychological and the legal side of it so that every woman knows the tactics and tools and how to maneuver. So thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
All right, guys, this isn't just about the Diddy trial. It's about extracting what on earth has happened to all of these poor women and how we can make sure that it never happens to me or you or anyone in our lives that we know. So smash that subscribe button so you can follow along every single week as we drop these episodes. Thanks so much for joining. Until next time, be the hero of your own life. Peace. To learn more about the truth behind Diddy's reign of control, the lies, the manipulation, so that you never fall for the same trap, you've got to watch this episode right here. He threatened to throw her in the East River. She was drugged. She watched him beat Cassie. She woke up with Diddy on top of her.